Chris, welcome to the podcast.
Neil, delighted to be here. Thank you for having me on.
It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure. I think a good place to start would be to talk around what got you into the recruitment industry, that journey. I know you've had quite a interesting past, what you're up to now, and then we can delve into some of the areas.
Well, I love recruitment. 25 years experience. I'm 47 now. People say I don't look it, but I'm.
No, you look well.
Thank you. Hopefully, I've got another 25 years in the sector as well. How did I get into recruitment? I kind of got my CV up and ready. I was living in Slough at the time, and just walked down Slough High Street with my CV and frog marched myself into 4 or 5 different agencies. Got some interviews. Interviewed at Computer Futures. Mm-hmm. Had 11 interviews and got offered the job. I was delighted to walk. And when I walked in there, right, it was like I was quite a shy, nervous kind of guy back then, 21. Didn't really know my arse from my elbow, really, I'd say. And ordinarily, the type of character I was, you'd think that walking into that environment would faze me. But for some reason, it really kind of galvanized me. And I thought, this is a bit of me. I really want this. You know, people driving Ferraris and there's pinstripe suits. But I walked in there and loved it. I joined a small kind of research team, really, where my role was really to pick up the phone and speak to as many clients as possible and just ask them if they had any vacancies. And I'd pass that lead on to the consultant. I was top of the league tables there. Absolutely loved it. I loved the whole concept of the cold call and picking up the phone. Then they set up a Bristol office and asked me to move to Bristol. I jumped at the chance, helped them set up, and became the fastest person in Computer Futures and SThree to get to 30 contractors. Did that in, I think, under 9 months. I can't remember, something like that anyway. Then I became SThree's worldwide top biller, knocking in about 600, 700 grand a year, placing project program management, change management, and absolutely loved it. Worked in the Thames Valley office, the Bristol office, the London office. And you could cut me in half and I would bleed SThree. I thought it was the holy grail, and I didn't think I'd ever leave, kind of thing. But for one reason or another, I think from a very young age, even from the age of like 3 or 4, I've had to stand on my own 2 feet. So I've always wanted to be an entrepreneur. I always wanted to have my own business. So I did leave, and I set up my own business in 2003. And in a 9-year cycle, we got that to 25 million quid turnover, 14 industry awards. 3 Virgin Fast Track 100 awards in a row, 3-star Best Company awards in a row, a couple of million quid EBITDA, 3 offices. And we didn't just win awards for our profitability. I mean, to win 3 of those awards in a row is difficult, by the way. We kind of went from like 3 million to 9 million really quickly and then escalated from there. But also awards for our culture as well. So how we actually embedded the right principles in our team, the right incentives. And I wouldn't ask someone to do something I'm not prepared to do myself as well. So I sat in the middle of the office. So the first couple of years, I was the top biller in the business as well. And I think that helped. It was 70% contract, which I think really helped. Good average fees, good process, good control. And people still say now it's one of the best, if not the best recruitment businesses of its time. And then my business partner walked in one day, said he didn't want to do it anymore. So we had to do a private equity deal, which I can talk about in a bit more detail later on. I did eventually exit. And took some time out. I took 4 years or 5 years out. Had some personal stuff to deal with, which I'll happily talk about. And then came onto LinkedIn about 3 or 4 years ago, kind of told my story in a pretty vulnerable way, actually. And people kind of took to that. And I became a bit of a personal brand, starting to get some traction, started to get 50 likes, 100 likes, and started to get leads and business. Then I built a NED portfolio. So since then, I've helped over 50 recruitment businesses build, scale and grow. I've got 72,000 odd connections on my LinkedIn, followers on my LinkedIn. I get millions of views a month, got my own podcast. So LinkedIn's been very good for me, but I love what I'm doing now. I'm going into businesses, working with the owners and the founders, looking at their vision, mission, values, but also looking at how they business development, how they account manage, all their processes, their operations and their marketing. And for me, I like that challenge. And people say to me, why don't you set up again? I could set up again tomorrow, but I don't think it would necessarily excite me. Where do I want to go with it? You know, I'd like to get a few of the businesses away for sale eventually. But for me, it's the purpose of what I'm doing. And having been a millionaire at a very young age and losing a lot of that, it kind of knocked me for 6, but also it helped me realize what's important in life. And also that adversity has helped me coach, lead and mentor the leaders that I lead in a better way, I think, as well.
Okay. So that purpose you mentioned there, what is that purpose?
Well, I think when I was a CEO of my big business, I don't think I had a purpose. I don't think I was on the planet. My purpose was to make as much money as possible, as quickly as possible. We had 80, 90, 100 people. I wanted to get to 500 people yesterday. I wanted offices, cars, watches, houses, Now, money is very important, but it's not the be all and end all. My purpose is to have an impact on people. My purpose is to impart my gifts, which I do believe I have now, on as many CEOs as possible, and help founders in the marketplace find their own purpose. When I go into business, I ask them. They'll say, "Well, we've got 10 people. Let's go to 100. We've got 5 million. Let's go to 50." And I say, "Why? Why are these numbers important to you?" More often than not, they don't know, or it's just a nice, magical, mystical number that makes them feel good. More often than not, people want a nice life, want a nice lifestyle, but they want to build something that's meaningful. So for me, it's about my purpose is to be a good dad, to be a good leader, and to be a bit different in the marketplace. Just to I lead with vulnerability. I lead with purpose, and I think you can have purpose and profit in that order. But when you just focus on profit, it tends to be a short lifespan, and then you almost got to start again, like I had to do. I wouldn't wish that on anybody.
So it was the profit which drove you initially.
Yeah.
But going back to SThree, I know that SThree's got a great reputation of bringing people up, great training, great development, a lot of big personalities to, I guess, be a sponge around and take that off. So that was a good training ground.
Oh, mate, it was phenomenally brilliant in terms of the learning. I mean, being a contract recruiter as well, I think, without being too controversial against perm, I love perm as well, but I think contract is more sophisticated. It's a harder sell, and you get more control. With a contract role, you're closing the client from the outset, and that mentality of closing is embedded and ingrained in me, and so is business development. So I think that training ground has stood me in such a good stead, particularly now. 2 or 3 years ago, we're talking off air, two years ago, the market was booming, and you just had to turn up and you get a job phoned in or given to you or emailed to you, and I think that was great. But a lot of consultancies kind of took that for granted. And now we're in a situation where they can't even spell BD, and they see it as this mystical, difficult challenge. So that's actually worked in my favor, where I'm teaching businesses how to properly BD, get in the right mindset. But business development needs to be a mainstay in everybody's makeup. A BD doesn't have to be a cold call. It can be putting a comment on LinkedIn. It can be going on a podcast. It's having a mentality that every call is an opportunity. Everything you're doing is an opportunity. Ultimately, we're salespeople, right? And if you're at a company and you're not comfortable with being salesy or being proactive or business development, you've got to question why you're there. And maybe the person who's hired you's got to question why they hired you as well. So it takes two to tango. So for me, it's BD's having a renaissance, and so is the phone as well, which is good. So I think you can BD in a very sophisticated, consultative way. Even if you're executive search, you can do all that kind of stuff. And for me, embedding that in your culture is absolutely crucial to making sure that you can survive in the good times and the not so good times.
Yeah. And from 98, when you started at SThree, to where you are now with BD, like we were saying before, I think a lot of companies are looking inward and how they get more business from candidates and clients.
Yeah.
Do you think the BD and the process has changed from 98 when you kicked off on the high street of Slough to where we are now? I know we've got different tools.
Yeah, I think it has and it hasn't. I think loads of technology has come in, which has been good, but also I think we've over-egged the pudding on that. We've become too reliant on automation, AI, and kind of like tech stacks, which I think is important. But I think that the old school ways have stood the test of time. Like if you ask me what one of the best BD techniques is speccing out good quality candidates to good quality managers. Do that consistently to the right people at the right volume, you're going to win. And when people say they're specialists, right, more often than not, they're not. So you say you're .NET DevOps specialist, but you're not getting any traction. But you can take that further. You can go vertical and horizontal. Pick 3 or 4 different industry sectors and find candidates with DevOps in retail and send those to retail managers specifically. That's these kind of layers and these kind of ideas that have stood the test of time. But I think that ultimately, if you don't send CVs to clients, you don't get interviews. So, people are wondering why they're not doing any deals because they're not doing the activity. So ultimately, you do have to do the activity. So in terms of, I think the phone's becoming a bit more palatable now for people. And I'm doing training courses on even how to kind of introduce yourself, how to build a rapport, all that kind of stuff. And I think that even internally, how recruitment consultancies are communicating with their teams, they're using Slack, they're using WhatsApp, they're using email. And hey presto, their consultants are then going to use Slack, WhatsApp, and email with their customers. And what you really want to do is be picking up the phone to your team or having meetings in person or Zoom meetings, and then they reflect that outside as well. So the old school way worked better back then because I think you were building more relationships, but actually real relationships back then. Whereas now, you can build a certain level of relationship via an email or online, but I think it's important to build relationships in a real tangible way, and too many consultants just hide behind email.
Yeah, I think picking the phone and doing a cold call, for some people, it's quite a daunting experience. I know I did it, not in the recruitment world, but in software sales.
Yeah.
And I was KPI'd with 100 calls a day, 3 hours plus talk time. And if you didn't do it, you were pulled up the following day.
Been there.
But it's having the right mindset, also not taking it.
Yeah, but if you map out the market in the right way, right? If you become a real knowledgeable expert, you start speaking to candidates specifically in a real niche. You get to understand the projects, you get to understand the people, you get to understand the terminology. Then when you're speaking to your clients, you're automatically more confident, right? So it's just things like that. But I'd sooner you have 5 decent conversations with a manager about specifics as opposed to dialing 100 calls to a butcher, baker, and a candle maker.
Yeah.
So for me, it's about a cold call doesn't have to be a cold call. So how can I make that less daunting for you? How can I make that more comfortable? And often it's knowledge.
I agree. If you've got the knowledge, then you're happy to have the conversation. I think it's the rejection or being caught out for not knowing what you don't know.
Yeah. But I think that the chances of you phoning up that manager and him going, "Oh, hi, Neil, I can't believe you phoned me. Perfect timing. I just signed off 4 JDs, 25%. Let's go." It's just not going to happen. So you got to expect it. You got to be prepared for it. And you got to accept it.
Yeah.
But also, when you do get a client going, actually, I'm ready, you've got to be ready as well. So it's one of those things where ultimately the game has changed a little bit where you can't be as brash and aggressive and close as maybe you could do 15, 20 years ago. But you have to have your sales hat on. You have to be adaptive. You have to have that intuition. So what I tend to do before we even make the call, if you're putting the client on a pedestal before you make that call, please, sir, can I have your vacancy? You're going to lose. So treat the candidates and the clients one and the same. And so what I do is I do kind of mindset and kind of belief systems before we even make that call and just get the person comfortable. At the end of the day, I mean, when I was doing it right, I didn't have my beard back then, and I was phoning up CEOs, and it was all great. And I used to meet them, and they couldn't believe it was me because I sounded like 15 years older than what I looked. So when you're on the phone, you can't even see the person. So I think it.
You overthink it. People overthink it.
Yeah.
But you were then saying that you moved through SThree, opened up their Bristol office. If you were die-hard SThree fan, loved what you did, but then from a young age you had that entrepreneurial streak and decided to open up your own firm. What made you actually make that step to do so?
I'll go into some of the personal stuff if you like. When I was 2 years old and my brother was 3, used to live in a caravan. My dad used to work on the railways. During the night, he came home. I was naked, half hanging out the caravan window. My brother would raided the fridge everywhere. We'd been left there all night, right? Abandoned by my mum. She fucked off, took whatever possessions my dad had. He said, "Where's mummy?" We didn't know. Never heard from her again, although I did see her 5 years ago. It's the first time in 40 years since I saw her. But my dad wasn't able financially, emotionally, psychologically to look after us. He couldn't cope with 2 young children. He was quite a simple man, wasn't very affectionate. So I was fostered for 4 years between the ages of 3 and 7. And my foster mum says to me now, even though I speak to her very rarely, she goes, even at the age of 3, I was like the parent of the family. Because so from that young age, being abandoned by my mum kind of galvanized me. It was a horrible thing. And then my dad remarried, and she was an awful parent to me, if you can call it that. She abused me quite horrifically. Used to beat me up quite a lot, stop me going out. Loads of stuff happened with her. So my first two female figures, my mum abandoning me and my stepmom leaving me, kind of fucked me up a lot in terms of my belief systems, my worthiness, my confidence. I felt unworthy. I felt shy. I felt different. I didn't complete a full week in the last week of school. Tried to commit suicide at the ages of 12, 13, 14 regularly because I just felt different. But on the other side, it also made me very kind of determined and resilient. So I think what happened, those two instances, my mum and my stepmom, on one hand really affected me negatively, but also gave me this thing, and on the second, I'm the only person that can do anything with my life. So kind of when I was in SThree, I had no fear. When I was speaking to a CEO or whatever, I kind of like, I didn't care. Mm-hmm. So in a paradoxical way, that adversity, I feel as if I've harnessed that and I've knocked the doors off at SThree. To be SThree's worldwide top bill, a lot of people say they were. I actually was. And I'm very proud of that. 4,000 consultants worldwide, £1.5 billion company. I was their top biller. And then I start a business and get it to 25 million. Very proud of that. And then I kind of lost that business. And now I'm regarded as one of the best NEDs, top NEDs in the whole sector. Mm. I'm not making these claims to show off. These are facts. Mm-hmm. And I think what happened to me was I was very kind of, I didn't believe my success. I didn't want to talk about my success too much, although I do talk about it quite a lot now. But it's almost like whatever I achieved wasn't good enough. Now I see I'm starting to love myself and respect myself and go, actually,
it wasn't good enough for you, do you mean?
No. Even if none of that stuff happened to me, it would be amazing. But I think it's even more amazing because of that stuff that's happened to me.
Yeah. When you kicked your business off, what was the journey that you took to go from startup to 25 million?
Well,
I know we could be here for hours talking.
No, not at all. So I left SThree and I was going to kind of set up on my own. I had a business plan ready, and then another guy who I worked with, he was on the perm side of SThree. He left, I think, 2 or 3 weeks before me or after me. I don't know. He was in Bristol as well, and he said, "Come to my house. Let's have a chat." I said, "Okay, bring your business plan." And his business plan was like 1 page long. Mine was like just about a little bit longer. We didn't really have a business plan. We just knew that we could do it. So we kind of got on really well. He had all the perm experience. I had all the contract experience. We kind of just said, let's get together. We set the business up in our middle names. And the first couple of years, we decided I was called David Branson. He was called Simon Ford. We decided to give ourselves pseudonyms, which is weird. So we decided the perception of having more than 2 people in the office. Mm-hmm. I remember going to one client site, a business called FD Systems. I knocked 5 or 6 people in there. Me and him went to the meeting, and the guy came out and he went, "David." And I was sitting there going, he went, "David." And after like 3 minutes, I went, "Oh, hello, I forgot I was called David." Just like stupid things like that, man. It was just like, and we had another meeting and what client said, "So how long have you been going?" And simultaneously I said a year and he said 3 months at exactly the same time, and we had some luck as well. One client paid us a 35 grand fee twice. And if he didn't, we couldn't have paid the team, so we had some trials and some tribulations, all that kind of stuff. But ultimately we grew that business really quickly. I think it accelerated mainly because when we had got to 5 or 6 people when we moved into this 80-seater office, ridiculous belief. And then we hired a strong billing manager on public sector. We went from like 20 runners to like 150 runners in the space of 2 years, went from 3 million to 9. And the contract element was really good for us. And that enabled us to get to 30, 40, 50 grand a week GP, knowing that we've got a year's worth of runway where we could spend the money. So then we started to be quite aggressive with our hiring and started to win a few awards and just blew up. And in Bristol, we got to 60, 70 people, set up a London office, set up a Manchester office, went to Vegas, all these great, it was just a brilliant business that we're very proud of. But yeah, and then it kind of, it took a few twists towards the end of that as well.
Mm. So before we get on to that, the actual creation of the business and then taking it from nothing to something seriously substantial. Mm. Is that because you think SThree was a good training ground? Is it because you had that that entrepreneurial spirit? What was it?
I think
a mix of that and everything else?
I think we used a lot of the SThree model, but also put our own flavour on it as well. So Pete, my business partner at the time, he was a DevOps recruiter. I was a project program management, change management recruiter. And I kind of came up with a blueprint of, well, we could do dev, we could do support, we could do IT like SThree. But I felt there was a gap in the market, not exec search, but kind of senior project program management, kind of 50 to 100K or change transformation, 600 to 700 quid a day guys that you could put into different industry sectors. And we stuck with that. So we pissed around a little bit for the first couple of years. And then we put this minimum fee in of, we can't do a deal under 6K. The team we had at the start, but threw their arms up, said that's not going to work. And then very quickly, our average fee went up from 4.5K up to 7K kind of thing. So our average fee was like 12K, 13K. Our average GP per week on a contract was 500 quid a week. So we were placing good quality business. We placed a program manager into a business. More often than not, that person would then need to recruit. So our candidate became our client. So, and we just love that whole kind of cross fertilization where, a good project program manager could work in different industry sectors. So we did a vertical and a horizontal model. I would say it was a third new business, a third where we placed 3 or 4, a third where we placed some key accounts. So we had small, medium and large accounts. We had short, medium and long-term strategy. We had contract and perm. We had good fees. We had good margins. We had good process. We led from the front, good culture. Yeah, so a lot of it was SThree, but a lot of it was making sure we had the right markets and also playing to our strengths, right? So at the first 2 or 3 years, this is what I teach my CEOs now, is don't be all things to all people. We were both trying to do everything. And what we ended up doing, we're both doing a lot of things averagely. Then we just said, no, you're obviously perm, Pete, obviously contract. So then I just took contract, he just took perm, and that worked really well. And it kind of like deciding, instead of both deciding what sort of brand coffee we're going to make, or buy, we just got, that's your bit, I trust you, that's my bit. And we'd have regular meetings. So it was, the timing was helpful, but I think it was a mixture of the passion and process, hiring the right people. And also I was very gung-ho, I'd say. If we could hire 5 people, I wanted to hire 55. Whereas if you could hire 5 people, he wanted to hire 4. And kind of the combination of that was quite good. So I think you need both, right?
Okay. And then it went a bit wrong.
Yeah. So we got to sort of 24, 25 million quid. London was going well. Bristol was flying. Manchester was going really well as well. I wanted to open up in Paris and speaking to a guy in Australia. I wanted to kick it on. But Pete walked in and said, look, he's had enough. His wife just had his 3rd child. I couldn't afford to buy him out because the business was worth millions. My money was all tied up. So we kind of like started to kind of speak to some corporate finance people. And before we even got the information memorandum out, we're getting offers in. People just heard. I accepted an offer that was really good. I went up from 50% up to 60%. They gave me this couple of million quid loan note thing. It was like an amazing deal. But for some reason that fell through. And I've got an inkling as to why that fell through now. But anyway, I then did a deal with a private equity vehicle that's fairly well known in the sector. Pete exited. I stayed on as CEO. I got a decent loan note, 7-figure loan note. Kept my 50% shareholding. Was paid very well to drive that business forward. The first year was okay, actually. They put a lot of governance in. It was a little bit different to what we had before. But in the second year, it completely dismantled. I was practically forced to make 1 or 2 people redundant that I didn't want to make redundant at a very senior level. And the culture of the business was completely changed, where if I wanted to hire somebody, I had to ask 6 different people and they'd say no in the end, or if they did, here's a mouse mat and a key ring. They'll under offer people. Board meetings were like 5 hours long. Everything was, the culture was shot, and kind of having regular disagreements with them. And then I was on honeymoon and I got an email saying you are banned from speaking to any of your team, my own business. You can't speak to any clients. Come to my you're kind of suspended from your own business. Come to my office on Monday. And I did, and then I had to take them to court for basically them holding me to ransom on my business. It took 4 years to get it to the High Court. I was 2 weeks away from getting it to the High Court. At that point, I think I spent over £500,000 in legal fees. And I ran out of money. I ran out of energy. I ran out of mental capacity. I was just dead. And pretty much on my knees in every aspect because of the nature of what happened. You know, there was they're very effective at disenfranchising my colleagues, turning them against me to an extent. And I kind of had to accept a very lowball offer. So essentially I lost tens of millions of quid, lost my reputation, lost my integrity. And for 3 or 4 years, I was in a real bad way mentally. And then obviously bounced back. So there's a bit more to it than that. I'm not saying I'm not accountable, because in many aspects I'm accountable as well for that. But anyone in the industry sector knows that this has happened to other people via this person as well. And I don't wish that on anybody. You know, whether you're male or female, talk about male suicides being high, but it doesn't matter. For someone at my age or any age to lose that business in the way that I lost it, I mean, I'm surprised I'm still here today talking to you about it. But it's also harnessed me, and I've been open about that on LinkedIn. It's not a secret, and people love the fact that I've owned that. And I think it's important that to say that I learned more in that process than I probably have in any other part of my career. So I've bootstrapped a business, got all through the PE due diligence. I know all about the private equity space, all that kind of stuff. It's brilliant, but to kind of have the mental capacity and resilience to kind of bounce back, I'm pleased about. And it's scarred me, but also it's made me the person I am today. So I wouldn't change it for the world.
You wouldn't?
No, because I believe that what's meant for you shouldn't pass you by. I think that at that time in my life, I probably needed a bit of a fucking wake-up call, to be honest with you. I wouldn't have wanted it done in that way, but I'm a different leader, different human being, different man now than what I was then. I was wayward. I was reckless. I was inspirational, motivational. I was powerful, but I was arrogant, I think, as well, probably. So it really shone a mirror into my own life, my own face. And I like to think I'm completely the opposite to those negative traits now. And I'm much more purpose-driven. I'm much more focused on personal development, much more focused on empathy, compassion, and doing things the right way. So I'm grateful for it in many ways as well.
So how have you managed to do that? So you've had a tough upbringing. You then looked on perhaps what happened as a motivator to better yourself. You then became top of the pile in SThree. So you almost used that to your advantage. Yeah. You've then set up your own business, gone through a dreadful breakdown of your own business, gone through all of that, but then you've managed to find the positives from it. How have you done that kind of almost twice?
Yeah, well, I think 3 times. I think without sort of labouring the point. I mean, everyone's got I mean, I host a podcast, and the last 2 guests have talked about how they've been sexually abused by their brothers and their families. Like, you know, so it's all relative, right? But what's happened to me isn't nice, isn't pleasant. I think, answer to your question, I think being abandoned by my mum, being abused by my stepmom, having my kids taken off of me a couple of times, it's kind of made me resilient. It's made me kind of be able to deal with pretty much anything. So now I get a bit of adversity or something happens to me, I'm kind of like, instead of panicking or attacking the world or blaming other people, I'm kind of like, why is this this is happening for me? What can I do about it? And more often than not, in that darkness, I now see when there is some darkness or some stress or some trauma, it's kind of like, there's something good about to happen. If I can galvanize there. So for instance, the market, right? The market, as we know, the last year or 6 months has been really challenging and tough. Yeah. So even myself, right, as a seasoned NED, I found it difficult towards the end of last year. but it made me galvanize it. And now kind of like I've got more clients I could wish for. So what I don't look for adversity, but I almost now thrive in it, because it kind of I'm ingrained. I switched to kind of like, right, get your head down. And I think sometimes when your back's against a wall, I think when there's a need and a want in salespeople, I think that's when they perform the best anyway. Going back to the point earlier, when the market was good and it's all rosy, I think people tend to kind of like, I never did. When the market was good, when I got to 30 contracts, I want to get to 40, when I get to 40, I want to get to 50. And I think in many ways, a difficult market, it brings the best out in the great people.
But you can become resilient and have adversity, but not necessarily, you can have that within yourself, but not necessarily act and be proactive to try and make the best of a bad situation. So what's made you do that rather than say rest in your laurels and just get through life?
I think I'm just built in a way where I don't want to settle for second best. I think as I said, I think because of what's happened to me, I kind of like, I don't know any different. I don't know how else to answer that question. Accountability is really important to me. And that purpose of kind of like, don't get me wrong, I'm a mental health advocate, mental health first aid. It's really important that you rest and you relax and you're not always going for the next milestone. But for me, if I'm not moving and growing, I feel as if I'm doing myself and the people around me a disservice. So I see life now, right? When I do it, for example, when I do a post on LinkedIn, it's not to get the likes necessarily. It's to pass on my knowledge and my gifts. So it goes back to that purpose point. If I'm lying around blaming other people, doing fuck all and saying, oh, it's the market, it's this and this, I feel as if I'm not living to my purpose. And when I haven't got a purpose, that's when I get into trouble. So it's almost a defense mechanism. I know if I go down that road where, that's just going to, that's a tricky slope. I don't like being negative. I like to be forward thinking, I think.
And now in your NED capacity in supporting businesses to grow, how do you go about working with those to bring all of your experience, good and bad, into their firm and making it the best you can?
Firstly, I'm very honest about what happened. In my when I get them on a Zoom for a discovery call or to just chat to me, I tell them what happened. So I think honesty. I think the reason why they come to me is because they like that honesty. I think one of the biggest fears in a recruitment business owner is building a business and then losing it or not building it at all. So I like the fact that I've been through that and come back. So I think it's about making them feel comfortable in themselves. A lot of CEOs, and I was this very person. I used to put a suit on and become this stoic kind of, really confident person, but I wasn't necessarily. And I see right through it. And I think they see what I see. They kind of know that they can't kid me, kind of thing. So I ask them the right questions, and I say, look, one of the first things is to understand the mission, the vision, the values. So where are we now? Where do you want to get to? Then it's like getting them to agree that, mate, stop trying to be a fucking hero. It's very clear to me you're exceptional at these 2 or 3 things. You're not very good at that. Leave that to me or leave that to someone else. Delegate stuff. And when you give them actual ownership of a specific project, they love that kind of stuff. I think deep down, a good CEO wants to be held accountable as well. Even though you're the CEO, I think it's important that you're reporting in and you're being told you're doing a good job as well, which is quite lonely. So it's kind of being their sounding board, being their kind of boss in a way, but in a way that it's obviously their business. And that approach is, I think they like that co-pilot mentality and process. Making sure that everything's followed up and having regular meetings, they've got the right team around them. But also, I think that a lot of these businesses they want to have these pie in the sky numbers. It's like let's just get to a certain point first. Kind of like just set a little bit of realism in them as well, I think.
And are you getting more satisfaction out of what you did in building your own business, or seeing other businesses thrive with your input?
Oh, I mean, I loved running my own business. The thrill of doing that was really good. But then I think back, being a CEO, I had 90 odd people. You had to be a a brother, a counsellor, a mother, a sister, and all that. And it's difficult. Being a CEO is not easy.
Were you happy at the time?
I was for the majority of it, but towards the end I wasn't. I think it almost got a little bit too crazy with having the private equity vehicle on board as well. I was getting detached from my team, sitting in my office looking at spreadsheets and ball packs all day. That's when I didn't start to enjoy it.
Yeah.
So I think I do enjoy what I'm doing now more, because I think it's a step up in my intellect. And what I have is, coaching CEOs is different to building a business. So I get fulfillment and joy out of. I used to get the fulfillment and joy out of placing a candidate or helping a consultant go from 250 to 400. Now it's businesses. So there's more fulfillment, and it's a step up. And I feel as if I'm developing as a human being as well. So as long as I'm doing that, but I'd never rule it out. If the right opportunity came along, I'd love to set up something up again.
You would,
but it's difficult. But then I think we all know how difficult that is. To build something of any tangible merit is draining. It's hard. It's not easy. So I've got 2 kids now, so I probably don't need to. But what I'd like to do is, I'm building a portfolio of businesses. Why not do that instead? I'm liking my podcast stuff. I've got a good quality of life now. I can go to being a CEO. I think as well. I think you kind of like. I think you're in it 24/7. I used to send emails at 3 a.m. in the morning and all that kind of stuff. Whereas doing what I'm doing, I can kind of manage my time and go on holiday with my kids a bit more. And you're not beholden to the whole business. You can dip in and dip out, which is, I love being really focused for 2 or 3 hours with a client. But I still treat them like I still feel the pain when it doesn't go well and feel the excitement when it does go. I still feel like that in my head, they are my businesses, but they're not. So I still got that kind of that buzz. And I think you have to have that mentality where you've got to treat it like your business as well. That with that level of this is that important to me that we do this. And in many cases, sometimes I'm speaking to my CEOs. I'm always teaching them to have more importance on their business as well. And I think some CEOs, they kind of like they get disenfranchised and they lose the important. Hang on, mate. Do you know how important this decision is? Let's get this right and kind of get them back on the kind of. Get their mojo right. Some CEOs I work, they've lost their love for what they're doing. And when you lose your love for what you're doing, you're in trouble.
Right. And how much do you learn from them as well as them learning from you?
Yeah, I think I'm not the finished article by any stretch of the imagination. I'd like to think they learn a hell of a lot from me. But also I think I'm still learning. I've got my own coach as well. And I think often it's not what we're saying, it's how we're saying it. There's different management styles as well. I am learning quite a lot from them, but what I'd like to do is who you surround yourself with, right? So I think because I tend to deal with CEOs and senior people, you tend to have those types of conversations. So I think I'm learning as much as I can learn, but also the sort of the content that also the podcast as well. I'm learning a lot from the type of guests I get on my podcast as well. My podcast isn't just about recruitment, and I think that it's important to have outside interests as well. I've met a lot of CEOs that they're so entrenched in their business, right, that it can be counterproductive. So I teach them. I talk to them about. So when's the last time you went out with your wife and your kids and that kind of stuff? I think getting that balance right is really important.
Well, are you able to see the warning signs of perhaps where things were going wrong or had gone wrong with yourselves in them and pull them up?
By how they communicate with me and kind of like, you can, when I ask them a question, they've got this robotic kind of numbers orientated answer. Like, mate, just chill, man. It's fine. So I think you can get both parts right if you. And my role is to kind of make them sort of step out and look at themselves and go, oh, actually, you are like that, mate. You are. And I think sometimes you take 1 or 2 steps backwards to go forwards.
Yeah, absolutely. And you said at the beginning there that you want to be a good dad and a good leader. How are you getting on with that?
Oh, mate, my kids, they mean the world to me. I see them every other weekend, Friday to Monday, every Wednesday, and half the holidays. Had them last night. They're 6 and 9, perfect ages. They're like two of my best mates. So I love being a dad. If you looked at my Instagram or my Facebook, you can see I'm all over them. When I'm with them, I'm with them. When I'm not, so I've got the best of both worlds, right? So this weekend is off. So I'm going to totally chill out, and I can't wait. And it's kind of like I see them enough to have a really meaningful relationship with them, but not too much that I can't do my business stuff. So I feel very fortunate with that. So I do feel like I'm a very good dad, and we hold hands a lot. We're affectionate. We have laughs. It's whereas I don't think I was a good dad when I was running my business at all. Actually, I've got an older son, a 24-year-old that I don't see now, and I feel as if I feel guilty for not being a good dad because back then I didn't know how to be a dad. I was too focused on the business. I'm a much better dad now, a much better leader now. So if I was leading that business now, I think it would be phenomenally successful. It would be a global multi-million pound business. But as you get older, you get wiser, and you become more rounded.
And if you start a new business, how would it be different to the previous one that you ran?
Well, I think it would be based on values.
Was it not?
No, not really. It was based on making as much money. As probably doing. I don't think, to be honest, I don't think we even had values. I'll be completely honest. I don't think we had values written on the wall, on the website, or anywhere. Now I post that today about it. So it will understand intrinsically what I want out of it, and it will be hiring the right people. I'd sooner have 5, 10, 15 people than 50. Not on the train properly. I wouldn't be as impetuous, but I still think I've got the same drive actually. And I actually feel weirdly the last 2 or 3 months I almost feel the same drive as I had even back at Computer Futures now, which is exciting. Now I think I've weathered so many storms now. The losing my business thing is out the way now. I've just climbed Mount Kilimanjaro in January. I feel now I'm quite excited. I've got a clear run, but this time I've got the tools, the experience, the knowledge, the scars. So God knows what could happen next. And I feel my toolbox, my toolkit is phenomenal compared to what. So if I could achieve what I've achieved without that back then, I'm really excited about what I can achieve now. So I think it's good to evolve all the time. And it's a balance, right? You've got to keep your feet on the ground. But I think it's important to dream. You've got to have dreams. I think people, it's difficult with COVID. I think what's happened with COVID and how society is constructed now, how we're controlled so much, we're always pissing on our dreams or pissing on our chips. And I think it's important to have desire, passion, and dream and something to go for. And some people don't agree with that. Some people say, well, yeah, but I'm happy with what I'm doing. But I've kind of had I've had the shit kicked out of me in terms of building a big business and losing it. So I don't need money, but what drives me now is I do want to be known. I do want to be in the limelight, but not in a way that only because I feel as if I've got a story and I've got a lot of knowledge that I can help other people. Mm-hmm. So whereas before I wanted to be successful because I wanted the money, I wanted the houses, I wanted the material things. I still quite like those things, but I want to be out there as someone that like a mentor and someone that can look up to. There's a different kind of mindset. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. How are you going about that? You obviously got your NED work. How are you? For those people who are listening to this story and they're perhaps coming through their own recruitment career, whether they're starting it or have been in a few years, they're perhaps feeling a bit lost. How are you going to go about and help them either directly or not?
Well, I think
I know you do a lot on LinkedIn.
Yeah, LinkedIn is going really well for me. My podcast is going really well for me. I think it's sticking to my principles. So I think I'm a walking example of being knocked down quite severely a few times. I could and should be probably quite an aggressive, bitter, blaming person. I don't think I am. I think I'm reasonably accountable, reasonably open, reasonably vulnerable and honest. And I think, why can't you have those attributes as well as being hungry, driven, motivated for money as well? So I think that's a process that doesn't happen overnight. It's a long game. So I think I think over the next 2, 3, 4 years, that's going to evolve and evolve and evolve and evolve, and that's the person I want to be, not just for other people but for myself as well. I want to be on the straight and narrow. I also want all the nice things in life as well. Don't get me wrong. I want that. I'm not saying you shouldn't be money focused, but I want to put my head on the pillow going, well, I'm doing something good and I'm being rewarded for it in the right way. That's what I want. And I think that just takes courage. It takes honesty. And you've got to be in it for the long haul, I think.
So with the clients that you're working with now, what are the top things that you're working with them on for them to be successful, not just as individuals and CEOs, but for actually running a successful company?
Well, I think that the first thing I do is understand the quality of the business that they're getting in. More often than not, I think they get delusions of grandeur. They get all these roles on with big clients, whatever. Oh, this is a great business, great role, but there's no control. It's a crap margin. You get 6 other agencies. So it's stripping it all back, and making sure that we're winning the right level of business with the right control. And also things like the candidate acquisition process makes me laugh quite a lot, where, we've got great processes. They'll walk in there and I ask, what I'm going to do, Mr. CEO, I'm going to go around and just ask your top 5, 6 consultants what they do first when they get a job on. I bet what happens is the first person will say, I go on the job board. The second person says, the first thing I do is write an advert. The third person does something. They all do different things. So it's tightening up all the processes. But it goes back to that BD thing where it's embedding that we are salespeople, and having the right BD culture is really, really important. And sticking to your guns. So having a market mapping as well is really important. So when say you're doing I've walked into businesses and there's a guy doing Java across Europe. I'm like, mate, what are you doing? Or I'm going to do the USA today. It's just like, so
tomorrow.
When I was doing it back in the day, I was doing AS400 mainframe. I was given the Southwest market. I had 43 clients I could possibly place into. The only clients that had that system, I placed in 42 of them, was billing 500 grand a year. I don't have to take it to that extreme, but I think it goes back to the point where if you're doing a technology, really drill down in the technology, but also segment it into industry sectors. Do Germany as opposed to Europe, or do Boston as opposed to the USA. I become a master of that. I think that's really, really important. And try and build a philosophy of contract and perm as well, cross-selling. But also as well, say another way of doing it, some quick hanging fruit is business development doesn't have to be new business. More often than not, if I said to my next client, over the last 2 years, give me a list of everywhere you've had a CV, job, interview or placement at. It'll give me a list of 100 clients. All right, so you've got 200 managers in those clients. So you've only got 2 managers per client. What does that say? It says, we pop in and we pop out. So those 100 clients, dish out 20 to each person, and their objective over the next 12 weeks is to go from 2 managers to 4 managers. You're going back in there and you're reselling your services, you're upselling your services, and you're kind of... So what I'm trying to say there is that it's about maximizing the clients that we do have, speccing in the right cat. So it's just becoming like almost... I'd almost want to remove the tech, remove everything, and go, right, what markets are we gonna master? Yeah, and where are we going to be in the next 12 weeks? Also, it's about, although the market dictates that we need deals quickly, have a medium-term philosophy about the number of new contacts you're adding to your database. So you can have the best database in the world, but if it's not populated with the right data, and you're not using that data in the right way, so have a philosophy, the more new contacts you're adding, the more chances you've got to build new business. So having a different mentality to business development, not just thinking about, we've had a great deal we've got a great month this month. It's building a future as well. And if you're building out, say, 100 new contacts a month, you can use that as a business development tool as well. Mm-hmm. So it's all those things. I think it's playing to your strengths, having the job control, having the right process in place, and also I would say things like personal branding is actually quite important in this day and age, right? If you aren't doing anything on LinkedIn, then you're going to get swallowed up. people don't like it necessarily, or they don't like doing video, or I think it's this, but unfortunately it's the way of the world. So getting that marketing piece right is really important as well. I think as well. So there's lots of things to do, but ultimately it's about embedding the right proactive culture, I think. Yes, you need to have some account managers. I'm warming towards the 180 model. I used to despise it. I think the way of the world, we've got to have that. But if you're a 180 consultant only speaking to candidates, don't tell me you can't business development, please, because you bloody can. You can get leads, you can get market information, and I think that's where, when you've got 15 people doing one role, it really it falls down. So we're salespeople.
You're saying that when you started your company, there was no values written on the wall, but the culture was great. Is that because you were driving a common purpose?
Yeah, I think what worked then doesn't necessarily work now. I think that you could. I think most long in the tooth recruiters like me would admit that 15, 20 years ago, the mentality of you got to walk through a brick wall for me. You can kind of get away with, not that that was the way, it was just the way it was. You kind of like making 100 calls, get on the phones. That was how it was back then. But the culture and drinking Sambuca on a boat for 48 hours with your colleagues after being worked with them all week was fun back then. Now I wouldn't want to do that at all. Yeah. So, it works. We going to Vegas, so work hard, play hard, work. The lunch ups kind of worked. And the culture was good fees. So very much practicing what we preached. So I wouldn't ask someone to do something I'm not prepared to do myself. I sat in the middle of the office. I floor walked a lot. I did some training sessions quite a lot, even though I was a CEO. I used to get my chair and sit next to the consultant, and they didn't find that necessarily overbearing. They did a little bit because I was the kind of boss, but they knew intrinsically I was a recruiter. They knew intrinsically that I've seen everything that they've done. So I think being down with the kids, and I think that's what worked. And I went on every lunch up, and I cared. But also, we did lots of one-to-ones. There wasn't anything revolutionary. It was just showing that we cared, being meticulous with every single detail, practicing what we preached, rewarding our staff really well. We paid our people really well. We didn't scrimp and scrape on that. And they saw me and the leadership team as having this really positive, forward-thinking mindset, and everyone felt that we was in it together. And we had a share scheme as well, which helped, I think. So there's a number of different factors. The market was better there. And I think the communication was better. There wasn't all this tech stack. There wasn't Slack. There wasn't WhatsApp. Every time something happened, we had a team huddle. We had a meeting, whereas I think in some ways it's harder to build a culture now with a work from anywhere, work from home. It's coming back a little bit now in the office, but I still feel that most of my clients, they use Slack to communicate with their teams. Like every single thing's on Slack. So I think that affects the culture now in a negative way. Whereas back then, you had to meet face to face, or you had to do that stuff. So communication was one of the big factors there.
We've talked to quite a few businesses last week before, at a panel discussion, that there's a lot of companies actually wanting to get back to the old school ways of working, like picking the phone up, getting face to face. Not necessarily back in the office 5 days a week, but going back to what worked then to get almost a bit of a competitive edge now. Yeah.
I'm really surprised. I've seen some stuff about. I don't think that old school, that the phone will ever die. But it's not the be all and end all. But I think I'm really pleased that that's coming back, because ultimately it's a relationships game. And I've got some sub 10 brands, as in sub people with less than 10 heads, where the team, they're opening up $1 billion accounts because they're picking up the phone, they're having proper relationships with these people. And and you can't qualify a candidate. I've seen sourcing teams qualify candidates just on email.
Yeah,
I mean, how can you do that? Do you know what I mean? It's ridiculous.
So I know we've covered the boom of 22. Then last year for a lot of companies it was a struggle. We've talked about some of the ways, the old school ways of just getting back to basics for the future. But what do you think 2024 is going to look like? We've spoke to some people. They're openly pessimistic.
Are they? Right.
But there's a lot of people who are optimistic, but I don't know if they actually believe it. But what's your...
Yeah, I like to be realistic, but I think you've got to be optimistic to a certain degree in any form of sales. I think you've got to have a level of kind of foregoing whatever people are saying, just getting on and doing it. I'm not a Trump supporter. I'm not political, but I think if he gets in, I think that should be good for the economy, because I think he'll sort the economy out, which will then have a big impact. And a lot of businesses are working in the USA now. I think the USA, as an example, the USA market, you pick up the phone to a client, they actually want to speak to you. So I think a lot more businesses are going overseas, which is good. I think there's a lot more startups happening, but I think the market is starting to come back a little bit. So I think that in every downturn that I've worked, and there's been quite a few, there's always people that fall by the wayside. But if you do the basics consistently, as we've talked about, actually you can thrive in these times. So I think that it's a combination of doing the old school stuff we've mentioned, maybe having an overseas presence as well. I think one thing that the benefit of the COVID work from home, work from anywhere, you can actually place anywhere now. And the regions don't matter. So consider doing that. I think the contract market is still thriving if you do that in the right way. So I think we've weathered the hardest part of the storm. Yeah, I really, really do. We're about to enter Q2 now. The days are getting it sounds a bit silly. The days are getting a bit lighter and brighter. That makes that does make a difference. It does. So I personally feel that Q2, Q3 will be quite good. Good. I do prefer the winter though. Do you? I do. I'm not with you on that one. Cold weather. No, I'm a summer man. So, how do people get in touch with you if they need to? I know you've got a good presence on LinkedIn, Instagram, but you can get me on LinkedIn. I'm always on there posting something. Yeah, good stuff. But I've been really enjoying it today. It's been a great chat. Yeah, I think we've covered a lot of ground. I hope what we have covered's been useful for people to listen to, and thanks for coming on. Thanks for inviting me. Cheers.
The Purpose-Led Leadership podcast is sponsored by Orca Pay Group. We've chosen to partner with Orca Pay Group because they are an umbrella and payroll company that leads with trust and transparency. They cultivate enduring partnerships with sustainable growth. They aspire to live in a world where umbrella and payroll companies are trusted, where confidence is earned and transparency is essential. They operate as strategic partners for growth. They are pioneers of exceptional service, and they put their recruitment agency partners and their contractor experience at the heart of everything they do.